Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, to another episode of Hollywood Backlot with Lou and you. My name is VashSky. I'm going to be your host for today's ceremonies, and talking about these past glories of pioneering vintage Hollywood is the one and only Lou Wasserman's Ghost. Lou, how are you doing today?
Nowadays, they're just trampling out the vintage where the grapes of wrath are stored. But the truth keeps marching on right here on the show.
Oh, isn't that right?
Glory, hallelujah, I tell ya. Anyway,
Absolutely. Oh, there's Citizen 427 Juliet there. Thank you so much. Jam Monroe, hey, you got family, but I do like the Fendels saying right there, gather the family around the screen.
Yeah, just like the old days, it's Sunday, so it's kind of, we should be seeing Uncle Walt hosting. I don't know, but he's not available, so you're stuck with us.
You're stuck with us. That's right. Tom F., thank you so much for modding. And if anybody would like to send in a question, a little bit longer form that is, go ahead and do so at t3ponline@yahoo.com. Feel free to, place your questions in the chat as well. But sometimes some people, Lou, they like to send us stuff. They like to be part of the experience, be part of the show. And actually, we have an instance where that happened. Let me see if I can go ahead and bring this up right here.
Good.
So we have, let's see, right there. There we go. ATB sent us this right here. With reference to the suggestion and my comment on YouTube regarding the Abominable Dr. Phibes. Here's a scan of the...
Phibes.
Phibes.
As in vibes.
Sorry. Here's a scan of the inside of my sleeve of my DVD. He sent us this right here. Isn't that cool? Ooh. Not bad. That is pretty cool.
Yes. It's a great movie. The sequel is great. The whole thing is great. It is, well, we're going to have to get the genre guys on this one of these days, but it's such a wonderfully bizarre movie. It's one of those movies that you watch and you say, who the hell greenlit this? But I'm glad they did. And of course, for those who don't know, it was directed by the guy who did a lot of the old Avengers episodes. And I'm talking about Steed and Mrs. Peel Avengers that always used to open with kind of a strange murder and then they'd be called in to investigate. Well, this is a whole movie full of these strange murders. And my favorite is the one where somebody fires a unicorn. Well, Dr. Phibes fires a unicorn across the street and it impales a guy against a wooden wall. And when the cops are there, you see the guy's feet and head rotating around because they're unscrewing it from the wall because of the twist in the unicorn's horn. Oh, God, there's a lot of fun stuff in this movie. It's nasty and wonderful. And Dr. Phibes.
Wow.
And then in the sequel, they did the whole Egyptian thing because, of course, a lot of people don't realize that when they found King Tut's tomb, the Art Deco world became Egyptian Art Deco with all kinds of Art Deco takes on Egyptian iconography and things. So anyway, they're great movies. Dr. Phibes is alive.
Well, I'm going to have to check that one out because I have not, I've never seen it before. So I couldn't even get the title of the film correct.
Yeah,
I'm glad you illuminated me to it.
Well, in the movies, people mispronounce it too. They call it Phibes or something like that. And
okay.
So it's about a guy who was a famous theater organist, and his wife dies on the operating table, and he decides to visit the surgeons who were involved with the plagues of the Bible to kill them one by one. So, there's a happy story for you, right? Anyway, it's a great movie. And thank you for sending in that picture. That's fantastic.
Absolutely. ATB, very much appreciate that. And that's just some of the stuff that people like to send us. And I think that's really, really cool. So feel free to send in your questions or anything else that you'd like to share right there at t3ponline@yahoo.com. Keep it safe for work, folks, as well. But yeah, I don't have to tell our audience. Our audience is already a cut above, but just saying. Let's see here. Oh, and there's Deborah. Thank you, Deborah, for coming in and sharing time with us. Now, Lou, how do you want to play it? Do you want to go ahead and answer a question? Do you want to illuminate our
You're
amazing
the host
audience
with the
to?
most. You decide. We report,
Oh,
you decide, as the saying goes.
I see. I see. Well, let's go ahead and take a question. How about that? Let's
Okay.
see here. Well, it's really actually this one's more of a suggestion. This is by Sean. Have the genre guys done or do Highlander 2: The Quickening? Pretty please.
Well, we'll see. I have to run it by the rest of the committee, so to speak, but that's a good one. That's a good
Absolutely.
one, although I still think the first one is the best by far. But
For sure. For sure.
Yeah.
Now, what do you guys have coming up on the genre guys now?
well, we've been a little kind of out of sync because
Mhm.
we knew that Hangry was traveling, so we put a couple in the can. And when Pro saw, oh my goodness, there's more than one, he went ahead and put them up on the air. So we're now struggling to catch up with that. We are going to be doing a special recording with a guest host in Hangry's absence, with our favorite guest host, our only other guest host, Marvin, the movie monster. And it's going to be that movie I mentioned, I think last week too, which is Sinbad, the Sailor, with Douglas Fairbanks, Maureen O'Hara, and Anthony Quinn, and Walter Slezak. Oh, and I'll tell you, and there's a larger issue, as I mentioned, the fact that a whole culture, actually a couple of them, the Arabian culture and the Persian culture, basically were a part of our artistic palette for a long, long, long time, until the idiots who took over there decided to make them rightfully persona non grata, and suddenly it all dried up. But it wasn't that long ago that I think probably the last one would have been Disney's Aladdin, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I think so. I think so.
Anyway, this is a marvelous movie, and it's full of charm and adventure and beauty, and you'll love it. So go watch it, and then you'll be ready, or wait till we talk about it, and then afterwards. And then, of course, they come here in 3 months. They start off as being members exclusives on the Pro channel, and then come here. And I didn't notice. Did you finally get Great Silver Bird Into Sky?
I was just about to get the Great Silver Bird Into the Sky, and then I had some more issues now with my editing system right now, so I had to prioritize that Park Place. Gotta get that up and running again, and getting the machine back together. It's just it's a little tough.
Back together.
I hadn't referenced those files in a while, and that might have been an issue. But don't worry, folks, it's coming. I promise. I know I've been promising for a while, but it is coming. We're getting back in a regular cadence there, and just like the genre guys,
Ada Quonset fans, hold your horses. It's coming.
It's coming.
And,
it's coming. I promise.
Yeah. And then after that, what's the next one after that? I don't know.
Ooh, I believe it's Alvarez Kelly after that.
Oh yes.
Check my list here. Yep. And I know you have a love for that film, if I'm not mistaken.
Especially because it's about something you don't expect, and because it's well done, and because it's got a theme song and a whole little animated prelude to explain that although armies are full of guns and cannons and tanks and whatever through the history, an army moves on its stomach. And this is a movie about beef, and getting beef to either the Confederates or the Union, depending on which way things go in the movie. And I think you'll enjoy it.
And I gotta look up the next one after that. Actually, I have to update my list because my list is out of date right now. So I'm going to go ahead and update my list for you by the end of the show. I'll tell you exactly what is coming up here on T3PO, or we like to call it that, Pod Place.
Yes.
Let's see here. I think, you know what we should do? We should provide our viewers something to listen to, maybe along with us.
We have a double jukebox jury today. We do.
That's right. That's right.
Just because these things make me happy, I decided to give you a couple of them, everybody. I don't know which one you want to put up first, but let's do the shortest, which is for those of you who may be unaware of them. There is a marvelous, marvelous acapella group out of, I believe, Korea called May Tree. And it's 5 amazing young people who do the whole orchestra with their faces. And they did a version of the classic Avengers theme that will just blow you away. And we have a link to it down there, and we'll put it in the chat now, I'm sure. And, you know, it's only, 3-4 minutes. But once you found them, then start exploring all the other movies. And they even did one of all of the studio logo themes, and another one with all of like the various versions of Windows over the years, and a lot of gaming themes too. But this one, this guy in the middle, when he starts to take off on that dun 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 dun, 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 I mean, it's a yell, it's a cry, it's a cause. Anyway, it's a lot of fun.
He owns the moment for sure.
Yeah. But they're all so, and this is how they do them. And they just put up a panel with the movie they're doing or the song they're doing, and they do it totally without benefit of any other instruments than their own creativity and harmonies, and they're great. And speaking of harmonies, our big Backlot jukebox selection today is a suite from the Mel Brooks take on Alfred Hitchcock, High Anxiety, which is a great score anyway by frequent Mel Brooks collaborator John Morris, but particularly because in the middle of this, and I forget which, when you go down into, when you bring it up, you'll see the various takes. Most of them have names. This one just has take 2, take 12, whatever. But when you get to the one that says with Mel Brooks, that's Mel Brooks doing his Frank Sinatra impression. There, the one performed by Mel Brooks. You see it right there?
Right.
And he sings the theme song as if he was Mel Brooks, or as if he was Frank Sinatra in this piano bar in a hotel. And it's just great. And listening to it on this is swell, but watching the actual clip is even more swell, and you should do that, and the whole movie for that matter. And he was concerned whether Hitchcock would like it or not. Well, Hitchcock did. He sent him a case of very expensive wine and told him it was excellent. So there you go.
Wow.
Anyway, it's a fun picture, and I think it's on our list someplace to do. Anyhow, those are our musical moments for this meeting of the congregation, and you can put them in your hymnal and enjoy them however you wish.
Absolutely. Both links are in the chat as well as the description there. So don't worry, we'll have them in perpetuity. If you are, in fact, watching the replay of this specific episode of Hollywood Backlot with Lou and you, these tracks right here, I did not realize that was Mel Brooks. I was kind of listening to it in the background right there.
Oh, go find the video. It's out there as a separate clip for that scene, and it's just what he does with the microphone and how he you know, it's Sinatra. It's Sinatra in a wonderful way.
Incredible. And then I actually did really get a kick out of this as well. Really, they go for it. And I think that's absolutely awesome right there. Very, very cool. Let's see here. I think we should switch gears and switch focus a little bit to, we like to cover, vintage Hollywood, definitely Hollywood of the 20th century. But, the industry, it's going through a lot right now. I think somebody that's very qualified to speak on it, is Quentin Tarantino. And I know, Lou, you shared this story in our back channels right here, and I was kind of taken with it because I was like, wow, that's really, really interesting. This over here at Breitbart with Nolte, Quentin Tarantino says movies died in 2019. What is he talking about? During an interview at the Sundance Film Festival. Is that still a thing?
We're not going to play this clip because it's not safe for work, as they say, and then some. I mean, even this little quote you can see in the box there. Let us say the F-bombs abound, but still, it's his enthusiasm. Oh, you have it with the bleep.
I have the edited version, Lou. You see, we can enjoy Quentin Tarantino's very unique approach to an interview question in all of its glory, while still being family friendly. So
a lot of good wine.
A little bit
for that.
He has a thing with language here. Let me go ahead and play it for you, and we can get into the deep dive on all of this stuff here.
No, I gotta pull it off. And here's the thing is, and that's a big deal. That's a big video pulling this off, and I don't know if I can, so here we go. All right, so that's really exciting. And that's a challenge, a genuine challenge. But making movies, well, what the is a movie now? Okay, what the is a movie now? What, something that plays in theaters for a token release for 4 weeks, all right? And by the second week, you can watch it on television. I didn't get into all this for diminishing returns. I mean, it was bad enough in 97, all right? I mean, not in 97. It was bad enough in 2019, and that was the last year of movies, all right? And that was a deal as far as I was concerned. The fact that it's gotten drastically worse, and that it's just it's a show pony exercise now, the theatrical release. And then in 2 weeks you can watch it on this one and that one. Okay. Theater? You can't do that. Theater? Yeah, they pay a lot of money to get in that seat. But there's no taping it. There's no cell phones. Hello, everybody with a cell phone. Okay. There's no cell phones. You own the audience for that time, for that for that moment. They are all yours. They are in the palm of your hand. And it's not just about doing art. It's about wowing them. It's about giving them a great night out. They made it worth it for them. Now that to me is exciting.
All righty. So sorry about that, guys. Very much apologize for dropping out of the audio right there. But I think there was 13, unsafe family friendly words right there. But the main context I kind of wanted to get to, and that's why I didn't want to read it, because he has a very interesting way of saying it, I think. Lou, what do you think about?
First of all, regarding the F-bombs, it's always a battle between A, they provide emphasis, but B, if there's so many of them, the emphasis goes away and they lose their power. So, there's that.
Right.
But what he's talking about, first of all, is a lot older than he's giving it credit for. And that is this. In the 70s, in the 80s, in the 90s, lots of movies got made knowing that the theatrical release, now these were not major motion pictures, but minor ones, B pictures, if you will. The theatrical release was the loss leader for advertising for the cassettes, which sold or rented quite a bit. So that sense of one being promoting the other is not as recent as he's saying. On the other hand, you're not getting paid that way either, because we have the case, of course, the famous case of Scarlett Johansson, whose deal was for a piece of the theatrical box office, but then after a week, 2 weeks, they released the movie on streaming, which cut into the theatrical box office, and she sued him over it. And they paid her like $25 million to say, sorry, we shouldn't have done that. Or at least we shouldn't have done it without warning you and compensating you. So, but that's all the mechanical and the business and the promotional side. What he's talking about is the experience of going to a theater and sitting with 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or 600 of your fellow human beings and experiencing something is going away. And we lose that at our peril. I remember we were talking about Mel Brooks earlier. Mel Brooks had a deal in his contract when all the multiplexes were on the march that they wouldn't play his movies in anything bigger than a 250-seat theater, because he wanted people to sit close together and laugh when the other people laughed and react to the reactions as an audience. And he just thought they didn't play as well if you were the guy sitting in row 12 and the nearest guy was in row 22. And he was right. And he was right. So the physical experience, the shared commonality, I always talk about back in the days of radio, when it was said that when Amos and Andy, the biggest radio show of its time, was on, and there was no air conditioning, you could walk down a street in any town USA on a summer's night and listen to the whole show, because the windows are open to ventilate the house and the radio was on and everybody was listening to the same show. So as you walk down the street, you never missed a word. Those kinds of common cultural experiences, certainly some of the great classics that we deal with in genre guys and here, they became, well, look at what Gone with the Wind became. Look at what Casablanca became. Look at what they became, a touchstone of our culture. Were they entertaining? Yes. Did they have great performances? Yes. Great direction? Yes. Usually amazing cinematography and set design and all those other things? Sure. But you don't go to the movie for the sets. You don't go to, I always thought, in fact, I happen to know a guy who was one of the big guys in PR at Universal when Jaws came out. And they were so worried that the movie wasn't going to make it that they did all this advanced publicity about Bruce, about the mechanical shark and how much trouble they had with it. And I always said, as big a hit as that movie was, if they hadn't done any of that, they hadn't explained anything about how they made it, it would have been bigger because people wouldn't have gone in there saying, well, it's a fake. They wouldn't know in advance. They wouldn't have seen the coverage of how the levers worked and how the boats worked, and how it would just be experience the damn thing the way that you do in that very first scene with the music and the and now they make memes and jokes about it, about how come anybody gets eaten by a shark, because don't they hear the music when it's coming? So anyway, I'm wandering around the subject, but yeah, he's right. But yeah, that's the way it is. And maybe that gives a false sense of comfort to some of these studios to say, yeah, okay, we're going to reshoot it 4 times and spend an extra $200 million, but we'll get it all back on the other end. It'll be fine. Oh, yeah? Not if it stinks. Did you see where the story came out that both of the trailers for Snow White have now got like over 100,000 hates?
A million.
Dislikes.
A million dislikes.
Yeah.
Which
so, those people are not going to go see it except to confirm their suspicion that it stinks, and they're not going to pay good money to do it.
You know, Christopher Nolan talked about this as well. I mean, he actually was much more forthright. He's like, look, these evil, greedy studios with their streaming services, I think is kind of his close to his phraseology there. Using films as a lost leader for them was criminal, and we know that he actually walked away from Warner Brothers after making films for them for many years, and worked and went over to Universal, and that's where his most recent film Oppenheimer was released, and now he's working on the Odyssey with Universal as well. It's very interesting how we have, I would say, these very prominent directors kind of speaking out about this, because even though maybe streaming services have provided opportunity for some, we lose with that, I think, especially with the very narrow windowing practices that these studios are utilizing for releasing these films. We're losing that kind of cultural, shared cultural experience, like you said, Lou.
Well, plus, these are event movies. These are truly event movies that these guys make. Right. And so if you make the event irrelevant, what's left to them? And let's not forget, I keep mentioning it over and over, but the way when people say, oh, it's about a 50-50 split between the theaters and the studios, no, it's not. It's about 80 or more up front for the first few weeks to pay the studios, and then it shifts, assuming the movie ever lasts that long. But when it doesn't, the theaters are in deep doo-doo.
Right.
Well, there's an interesting comment. I'm looking at the comments, and I see if sets weren't important, then you'd be just as happy at Six Flags than you would be at Disney. I don't know that that's true. But you go with different expectations.
Right.
You go with different expectations. And
you absolutely do.
Yeah.
And I think it.
Yeah, and when people started watching big movies on their phones, I'm going on a postage stamp. This was shot, Ben-Hur or Gone with the Wind, and I'm going, what are you, crazy? You might as well just wire it into your brain, I guess. But I don't.
Well, that's what Tom Cruise said about Top Gun Maverick. He's like, I put my life on the line for this movie. We set an expectation with the audience, or at least for ourselves, to film this thing in the largest format possible. I'm not gonna put this thing out for tiny screens.
See,
he held on to it.
Now that goes with what I said about Jaws. Yes, he put his life on the line. We all know, because we all, for weeks and months before the movie came out, the most recent MI, saw all of that stuff about how did they do that big jump. Maybe we shouldn't have seen that. Maybe we shouldn't have seen any of that. Maybe we should have just gone to the movie and been stunned. Rather than, oh, this is the thing I saw on YouTube, how they did it, was they put this and that and the other.
I totally get you.
So I understand the urge to make maximum attention out of something, but often that works against the effect on the audience. It just does.
I wanted to include some of Nolte's commentary here. The background here is that Tarantino is currently working on a play, so he's explaining why that excites him more than making another movie. The 61-year-old Oscar winner has repeatedly said that his next movie will be his last, and he was close to production on The Movie Critic starring Brad Pitt when he decided to pull the plug and move to playwriting. The obvious dividing line here between 2019 and today was the COVID-19 pandemic, which effectively changed the theatrical business forever, where theatrical releases are currently made available in a matter of weeks at home as a pay-per-view offering. What had been a 3-month window is forever shattered. From a business point of view, this makes sense. The studios want to get those homebound viewers while the theatrical publicity is still hot. Why pay for 2 publicity campaigns, theatrical and home, when you can have one? Interesting idea. Tarantino is not speaking from a business or even artistic viewpoint. He's speaking as something sorely missing in the entertainment world today, a showman. Quote, and it's not just about doing art, he said. It's about wowing them. It's about giving them a great night out, and that makes it worth it to them, and that makes me excited, I'll say.
Well, and you know what's funny is I was just thinking about great showmen of the past, and I thought of Michael Todd, who, of course, made Around the World in 80 Days, huge movie, with 40, 50 cameos, as he invented the word, actually, cameo performances by all these great stars, everybody from Sinatra playing the piano in a saloon to Charles Boyer being the agent in France for the balloon.
Right.
But here's the thing. You wouldn't know any of those people if it hadn't been for the previous actual movies they'd been in.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
in other words, this whole process is skewing the process of making people famous. I looked at the nominees, for example, for various awards, and it's like, oh, is that somebody? I never heard of that person.
We have a question related to that, by the way, Lou.
Oh, good. Well, okay, let's see.
We do. Let's get to it. I just want to highlight this one point right here. Imagine you build a roller coaster and you believe it's the greatest roller coaster ever created, but only one person at a time rides it. As the creator, you'll lose the satisfaction of the group experiencing your creation. That's a very different thing. I think it's a good.
But I have to tell my story. Some of you will have heard it, some of you not.
Please.
Building a roller coaster, or for that matter, a movie, is a big financial commitment, and it has to have a payoff. It has to be figured out in a budget. It has to be viable. Many years ago, a friend of mine was giving a class at the Actors Studio in LA, and it was actors, and they would take a play that had not yet been produced and do a reading of it, and then the author of the play would discuss it with the people in the class. And something happened where he was suddenly a week without one, and he knew I had a play. And he asked me, he says, I know you don't care, but come and do it for me, would you? And come up with some questions to ask these kids. Pardon me, but even then they were kids compared to me. And we did the play, which was well received because it's a damn good play. And I said to them as my first, just to start a conversation question, not because I really cared what they thought, to tell you the truth. I said, so I'm thinking of rewriting this, and I can't decide whether it should see the light of day first as a play or as a TV movie or as a feature film. Which one do you think best lends itself to this material, having seen it? And this smart-ass punk in the front row, wait a minute here. Are we talking about the play or are we talking about the deal? with utter contempt. And I leaned over and I smiled and I said, "A-hole, without the deal, there is no play." So that whole question about, oh, I built this roller coaster and only one person can ride it, well, then you did a stupid thing. Because roller coasters, if theaters are about 500 people sharing the experience and wooing and eyeing and laughing and whatever, certainly riding a roller coaster is about you and the 30 or 40 other people in the train screaming at the same time and laughing at the same time and going through those emotions together. So,
well, I think I think Nolte's point, I think Quentin Tarantino's point was more about not necessarily getting people into the theaters, because I think people will go to see a Quentin Tarantino film. I think for him though, it's about maybe how long that theater film is in that theater.
It no longer becomes special when it shows up on your streamer.
Right.
It just isn't. It removes the event quality of the movie. Now, when he was unknown, was it an event? Yes, but nobody knew. In other words, there has never been, with the all due respect to Mr. Tarantino and to Hitchcock and to Michael Curtiz and to John Ford and to all the great directors, there's never been a director's name above the title that sold a ticket. Not in any kind of volume. Actors, yes. Directors, no. And writers, that used to be a standard Hollywood joke about, did you hear about the Polish starlet who came to California to Hollywood and screwed the writers? Anyway, and I can tell those jokes because I'm part Polish. But anyway, the audience goes for the stars, like that book that we've promoted several times here about the star system,
Star Machine,
how it worked.
And some people are bringing up some directors. I think exceptions to the rule. Is that right, Lou?
Well, I don't think so. I really
don't think so.
I don't think in anything like
I don't know about that.
The massive numbers that require an expensive event movie to be a success. Maybe I would make an exception, for example, for Chris Nolan for Dunkirk, because people nowadays are so uneducated in history that I bet a lot of people said, Dunkirk, what's that? On the other hand, his biggest movies had the Batman going for them.
True. That's true.
So.
But I think Universal giving, I think, like 20% of the take overall, which was pretty insane. That was a deal done for that director because I think they understood his value in the marketplace. So I definitely see what you're saying.
It would A, get people there opening day and opening week, and B, it's probably going to be a good movie because he doesn't make stinkers. Although there have been a couple that have been less than brilliant or less than successful, which I thought were good movies, but they just were a little too offbeat for their own good.
Right. That's a fair point.
But
Tenet, I think, was one of them.
Yeah, Tenet was the one I was thinking of.
Yeah.
But
Mary White. I love all these movies, by the way.
Yeah. Interstellar, absolutely great pictures. Great pictures. And yet, you see, look, here's for Interstellar. I just saw a meme today on Facebook, and it showed a picture of the flooded water planet, in Interstellar. And it says, surprising movie fact, the water planet in Interstellar was filmed on Earth. That's pretty funny if you think about it.
Real locations for all those places.
Yes.
Some CGI augmentation, but very, very cool. Very, very good stuff right there. Yes. Don't worry, Mary White, I got you. That is an interesting thing too. Speaking of Christopher Nolan, Memento's still one of my favorites from him. I guess the star of Memento actually came out recently with an interview saying that he apologized for his performance because he didn't quite like what he gave on screen, but everybody was
many people are doing that. I saw Costner saying that The Untouchables he was sorry for it because he didn't think he was mature enough an actor to really give that what it should have had. And he thanked so much Connery for helping him through it. Guys, look, when I was in film school a million years ago, back when that film school was in a World War I cavalry stable, there was a guy, we had these films called, because it was the class number, 310. A 310 movie was about a 5 or 10 minute, 16 millimeter non-sync sound movie. Then you worked up to a 480, which only about 8 people got to do, and I did, and that was a more complete movie, but still a short subject technically. And there was a guy working on his 380. He'd already turned it in. He'd already gotten the grade, and he was still there in the editing room, sitting in a moviola for 2.5 years. And I kind of thought, I think it's probably time to try another one. I think you've probably learned all you can learn from that one. I think it's time to move on,
2.5 years?
Yes, after it was done, after it was graded, after it was no longer anything that was going to do anything other than for him to, and it was take out a piece, take in a piece. Of course, the fun thing about that editing room is famous people came by. When I was working on mine, Arthur Penn happened to be there. I said, hey, take a look at this and tell me what you think. And got his advice, just because I could. But anyway, people have to learn to go on from there, and I think looking back all these years and saying, gee, I wish just because somebody asked the question doesn't mean you have to dignify it with an answer. Maybe we're learning that in our modern era with Martha, I don't care. But anyway, yeah, well, just
do you know this joke, Kubrick?
Well, of course, the original joke, Citizen 427, was Samuel Goldwyn, one of his famous aphorisms. He said, a rock is a rock, a tree is a tree, shoot it in Griffith Park, as opposed to going on location. So,
right.
There you go.
Man. Wowzers. There you go. You did mention the Academy Awards, and actually, it's perfect. It's a perfect setup for this question here from Paul, who had 2 questions, by the way. Apparently, the 97 Academy Awards is going to be on March 22nd, 2025, is what he was saying. How does the Academy...
No, you can't add to it. They send out a nomination list, and you vote for your nominations, in the top 5 or 7 or however many they're letting in now that meet the standards, which are bizarre, go on to the final list. And how it works in a little bit of a way is interesting in that just because there are 5 nominees doesn't mean you have to vote. In theory, you vote for the 5 in order. What's your first choice, second choice, third choice, and they weight it based in that.
So it's like a ranked choice? Yeah.
But if you decide only 2 of them or 1 of them are worth it and just vote for that, nobody challenges that. In fact, I'm having a little bit of trouble on one particular vote right now about whether I'm going to vote for any of them, to tell you the truth. Because the one I think is the best of the movies, because the others are so awful, is directed by somebody I really don't like and don't want to boost the career of. So, God, what a moral dilemma. Somebody whose name would be famous to all of you for a lot of negative reasons, especially involving superheroes, although this is not a superhero film. But anyway, how it works is you get the list and you pick. And you can pick 1 or 5 or however many you want to pick, and you pick them in order. And somebody computates all that and figures out who the winner is. Price and Waterhouse, the accounting firm.
Oh yeah, Waterhouse. I forgot about that. They do that. What was your? I'm guessing you've voted for a while now. I'm sure.
Yeah.
What was your biggest? I don't know, like that should have been the other person got it moment. In your career.
I don't know about that. I try and put it out of my mind when I'm done with it. One of the interesting things, however, about, for example, my home guild, if I can call it that, which is the Directors Guild, is that it's not just the director who gets nominated. And not just the director who gets an award. It's the director's team, which means the UPM, the first AD, the second AD, in some cases location managers, because we cover those for the East Coast, not the West. And they all get recognition, which I think is kind of nice because you don't do it alone. And remember, as I've said before here, a UPM and a first AD are hired at the approval of the director, and yet they spend the entire production telling the director, no, I want 50 extras. We can afford 20. I want to do it in 3 days. Sorry, you can only afford 2. And so there's kind of a love-hate relationship going on within that team. But good directors know that, and bad ones are bad ones. So that's life. Anyway.
Speaking of the, you talk about Waterhouse doing it. Do you remember the fiasco, the biggest flub in Oscar history when it came to the best film, which is
where they read the wrong one, or
they read the wrong one,
Yeah,
La La Land for Moonlight, which, by the way, Moonlight's director went on to make Mufasa. So that's interesting, but it's a crazy story, folks. If you don't know the history of this. 1 year after the craziest, most improbable, and downright embarrassing moment in Academy Awards history, 29 key players open up, many for the first time, about the onstage chaos, backstage bickering, and who's really to blame for Envelope Gate. The 2 minutes and 23 seconds that La La Land beat Moonlight. Yes, at the best film category, which is the biggest category.
Such is life, Man. I mean, I don't pay much attention to that stuff. It's blah, 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 and Mary White, I'm with you. I sat there going, the only people who think this is great musical is people who don't know from great musical.
Oh,
I was not a fan of La La Land, unlike most people, so go figure. It was, somebody used to call certain things faux dancing or faux singing or faux musicals, and that's the way I felt about that picture, but that was just me. And I see somebody talking about metric ton of screeners in the mail, and every year, the 80s and 90s, glad it's all digital now. Yeah, well, as I've mentioned before, I still get some screeners, which are discs, and they come with all these provisos. This disc is technically coded to you and you alone, and if it ever shows up somewhere in a piracy situation, you'll get spanked and won't get it anymore. And so be sure you destroy it. You literally are supposed to cut them in half when you're done watching them and not share them with friends. I have such pleasure destroying some of these things. I only watch 10 minutes to find out they're stinkers. But anyway, and then the digital ones now, where they give you a code, only are valid through, I think it's right about now, like the middle of February or beginning of March or something like that.
it's like
anyway, they all want you to watch it, and I appreciate that. But when I read a description, first thing I do is go to the synopsis. Sometimes they don't even give you one, and I have to go look it up. And when it says a dysfunctional family full of hate continues to hate each other for 2.5 hours, I say, no, thank you. I have enough of that. I'm sorry. I'm not against drama. I'm not against conflict. I'm not against real. In fact, I've suggested a couple of movies we've done on the genre guys that the other guys have said, God, why did you bring that dark thing up? Because some of them are a little grim. But my standing joke, I don't know if any of you saw the movie The Rose, which was Bette Midler basically doing a takeoff on Janis Joplin. And at the end, she commits suicide. And I said, well, the movie had a happy ending. She spent the whole movie trying to destroy herself. And in the end, she succeeded. Hooray. But not my kind of thing. I don't care how well you can sing in the meanwhile. Anyway.
I mean,
we live in such a quote unquote non-judgmental world.
Right.
We had movies like that in the past with people who were self-destructive, but the point of the movie was to show you A, why, and B, how to get away from it. Now it's like, oh, you can't say they're bad just because they're suicidal. Oh, really? If they don't give a damn, then the hell with them. I don't either. That's just how I feel. And I am just one member of the audience out there, just like you and you and you. And anyway.
I'm like Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf. That's it. It's quite the film right there. That'll make you uncomfortable in some places.
Well, we did a great genre guys on Virginia Woolf, which
sure did.
Which, thank God, they stuck to their guns and got Jack Warner to stick with them about fighting the code and fighting putting it out in black and white when everybody wanted to do it in color, and then they got in trouble. You know, they went to, I can't think of which off the top of my head now, but which college that they actually shot some of the location stuff at. And the college said, well, you can shoot here, but no paparazzi, because, of course, Liz and Dick were the subject of the most intensive press ever.
Absolutely.
You know, and somehow the paparazzi got wind of it and got on the campus, and there was a major scandal about that. But Smith, yes, it was Smith, I think. Umnick is mentioned.
Always with Liz and Dick. Can't keep a controversy out of the filmmaking. Well, hey, sometimes that's a promotional piece all into itself. Very, very interesting. It's interesting. I think you mentioned just now, you know, bad films, good films. I got to be honest. You know, if like a Acolyte or your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man, for example, we're going over it right now with the pro show and everything like that. It's like, wow. You know, if I didn't have to endure this for our viewers, so that our viewers don't have to, I wouldn't be doing this right now.
Did you
There's
see my
so much
joke
great
about the
content out there.
Fantastic Four thing? Not the
No, I
cartoon,
didn't
but
see
the
that.
movie. I said, so now we have Reed Ricardo. I said, Iger, you got some splaining to do. Because Pablo Pascal is so with the mustache and everything.
Right.
But anyway.
You kind of answered this. I'll go ahead and ask it anyway for Paul. What films and actors were you impressed with last year, and why that did not appear on the list? Best actor, actress, etc.
Golly, last year. I need a day to think about that. I'm sorry.
No, you're fine.
I just the last movie I was truly impressed with would have been Oppenheimer, I think.
Yeah.
And even that had some edges that sort of, there's so many that sort of start getting close. I started to watch, for example, The Brutalist. And it's really good. And then you can't have a sex scene, apparently, without showing a hard member. And I'm going, why did I need to see that to get that they were having sex? And it's just things like that that just are, my point is not to be a prude. My point is it takes you out of the experience rather than keeping you in it. And at that point, I became disinterested. And, you know.
In a different way, your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man's kind of like that, where it's like, ooh, this is actually not too bad. This is pretty okay. I'm following the story here. Peter Parker's great. And all of a sudden, something happens that takes you out of it. I think you're right, Lou. So many of these things are if they're not horrible, they're actually not too bad, but they do something that's like, wow, why was that necessary?
Well, and the same thing can be true of camera movements or special effects or anything that calls attention to itself rather than tells the story. Ideally, you shouldn't notice that stuff until afterwards when you're analyzing it. I mentioned I just read a very interesting autobiography, or not auto, but a biography of Otto Preminger, and about how brilliant he was about understanding the widescreen, the CinemaScope frame, and posing people in shots where relative to each other, they were in the foreground or the background, and just letting them talk rather than having to cut forever to close-ups or move the camera. And he understood it because he understood theater and letting people take stage. So, you know, were they all brilliant movies? No, a couple of them though, boy. Anatomy of a Murder. You want to watch something that'll hold you? And they shot it entirely on location in some little town. And the guy who plays the judge is the lawyer who did that Have You No Shame at the McCarthy hearings, and Jimmy Stewart and Arthur O'Connell and Ben Gazzara and a very young Lee Remick. Great movie. Great. Eve Arden. But Preminger's father was a very famous lawyer in Austria. And so he was into legal procedurals. And then, of course, his other movie that I just love is, and that we've done, or we're doing, I forget which, is In Harm's Way, which starts off on the eve of Pearl Harbor. And that's John Wayne and Kirk Douglas. And by the way, the I think it's Jerry Goldsmith, or is it? No, it's Elmer Bernstein, who did the music, is also the band leader at the dance at the beginning of the movie. Yeah, he's actually leading the orchestra. So, but great movie. Anyway, what else have we got to talk about? I'm sure there's something.
Speaking of movies here, we have a question about movies here. Leg Kick 1 says, do you think that being able to film on your phones and directly downloading to YouTube will ever take over from or bypass distributors? I was thinking the money borrowed for Evil Dead. I believe they're...
is the answer to your question. And I keep bringing up this same story, but when Easy Rider came out and became the #1 box office movie of all time, and it was made for about $900 and some odd thousand, and the previous champion was Gone with the Wind, which was made for a then astronomical $4.5 million. The question around town was, well, are the studios going to start making movies for only $1 million? And the answer that came back was no, because you can't steal $1 million out of $1 million budget.
That's so true.
Let's put it this way. If I thought, based on their behavior, that the big studios, I'm looking at you, Mouse, cared about the size of the budgets and the reshoots and the overshoots and the insanity, then maybe. But, what was the last thing shot that way? I guess Blair Witch, as far as being a ultra low budget. Although I keep seeing these things on Facebook and on YouTube of people inventing movies. I saw one the other day featuring Christopher Reeve as Superman and Linda Carter as Wonder Woman in a movie together as a retro take on that period. It would have been great. It would have been just great. But, Or then I saw, on the other hand, I saw a take of the old classic Linda Carter Wonder Woman credits, but with Gal Gadot instead of with. So there's all this stuff out there, certainly. But again, they're all basing their stuff on stuff that's already been established by the real companies. And then the real companies keep recycling the same characters and ideas and people. And I keep going, what if you thought of something new, guys? Would that be such a terrible, 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 awful deviation from reality for you? And the answer is they can't. I just wrote, I don't think it's up yet, but I just wrote a piece for TPP about creativity and where it goes to die. And listen, folks, we've had a lot of people on all the various channels. Well, if they only fired Iger, well, if they only did this, if they only, you've got a culture there, a deeply embedded culture of people.
So true.
As I keep saying, and please hear me when I say this, nobody, and I mean nobody, sets out to make a bad movie or a bad TV show or a bad theme park attraction. They don't.
Yep.
But that means that their definition of good is not the audience's definition of good when they come out with these stinkers. And so it's not a question of desire or effort. It's a question of the basic judgment being so far out of whack with the world as it is, as politically one party learned to its demerit. And that same party just picked a crazy kid who's an anti-gun person to be their vice chairman. So how far out of whack are they? I don't care if you believe what the majority believes. I don't care if you are for what families are for. When they're your audience, they're who pay the bills. And you can't tell people. There was a comedian years ago. Anyway, he had a record called "You Can't Keep Beating People Up and Have Them Say I Love You."
Yes, it's so true.
So nobody tries to make crap, but some people don't know what crap is and isn't. And when they're in charge, their judgment is why things happen. So enough of my soapbox.
No, you're just fine. I think the trade of output from Hollywood stems from, people who have limited life experience, let's say, or are more interested in propagating messages rather than stories, and it creates a witch's brew of mediocrity, let's say. Spaceship Ear says AI generated videos are more entertaining than some of its remakes. Yeah, in some ways. I mean, especially when these remakes are really, really bad. Now, Lou, what do you think about Hollywood being kind of forced to go back to the well of things that people understand or people are familiar with in order to have an audience built in?
Who's forcing
the
them?
amount?
Who's forcing them? My experience has been, and I've mentioned a couple of particular examples, and not recent ones, going way back. The one that I always mention was, the two, and they're both Westerns, are the feature version of The Wild Wild West with Will Smith and the feature version of Maverick with Jim Garner, but still Mel Gibson. And in both cases, the thought was, my God, we have this huge built-in audience of people who love this property. Let's make it. And then the next thought was, and let's take everything out of it that the original had. How can you do The Wild Wild West and not have that theme song in that opening credits? How can you do Maverick and not have the theme song? How can you do... And then you look at the really huge properties that they bought, for example, when Disney bought Fox, and you look at all the Irwin Allen stuff, the Lost in Space and Land of the Giants and shows like Combat and the Rat Patrol and all these things that were Fox shows back in the 70s that I grew up on. Peyton Place, for God's sakes. And they haven't done anything with them. And if people say, well, people don't know that old stuff, great. Run it on Disney Plus and they'll get to know it and then make a feature or a new series or whatever. So there is no command in the sky that says, thou shalt remake to death things that were popular. And certainly no command in the sky that says, thou shalt take the most popular princess in your panoply, aka Moana, and wait 15 years to do a sewage-filled splash pad at your theme park. I mean, there's just some common sense. Look at this thing right now, where a couple weeks ago there was a sewage leak at the Land Pavilion in Epcot, upstairs, the restroom, on the level where the restaurant is, if you know the pavilion. And underneath that is the entry stuff to Soarin'. And yesterday, I guess it was, the ceiling there fell down on people. Now, let me ask you a simple, dumb, what I call one of my, what does God need with a starship questions? If your house had a plumbing leak, if your business had a plumbing leak, if your shed had a plumbing leak over an area where people go, wouldn't you kind of tear open the ceiling to see if there was a problem before you let people back under there? But no! That's not about being an Imagineer. That's about being a human being with experience of life and common sense, and these people don't have it. Or they're told, forget about it, it's too expensive. What's more expensive, the lawsuit when it falls on somebody's head? There you go. It's just insane to me that you wouldn't have, as long as that happened, kind of taken a poke around up there and see if you got a problem still. But apparently they didn't. And that's what I mean about them. None of those people want people to be hurt. None of those people are saboteurs. They're just not grown-ups with common life sensibility. And they got hired based on who or what they represent rather than, and it goes to everything. It goes to everything. I'm not beginning to make a judgment here about what happened in Washington, D.C. the other night. But I do know that they said that understaffing of that tower at Reagan National was commonplace because they couldn't get enough qualified people because the FAA was hiring people based on physical characteristics and not on skill. And that people who actually passed the test with higher numbers were rejected because they were too white and too male. It's got to be about results, gang. Life, theme parks, movies, everything has got to be about results. And anyway, I'll once again get off my my thing. But all of these remakes, let me tell you something. When you've done 43 multiverses, you've probably done enough of those.
Yes.
You've probably used up all you're going to use up, or at least take 10 years and think about it before you do it again. But no.
I don't disagree with that. And I think with that about concludes our program for today.
I'm so glad we've had, if I could virtually pull my ear here, I'd be doing Carol Burnett. But listen to the music, gang. And anyway.
And Lou touched on it a little bit, but we're going to be talking about all these stories and more throughout the week on That Park Place. You can catch us at Morning Magic at every single day at, I think it's
11?
When is Morning Magic? No, it's 11. It's 11 a.m. Eastern. Sorry,
yeah.
I had to do the math.
I was understanding. Well, it's after
that.
Culture's 6 minute that runs hours, and it's before the show, and then we have the show every Thursday afternoon at 4. So, wherever there is danger, you will find us. Wherever there is whatever, we'll be there. We are a plethora of programming. And
absolutely. And I see Pam trying to flag me down in the chat. Pam, go ahead and place whatever you want me to send over to Pro or Marvin. Go ahead and put in the chat again, and I'll go ahead and make sure that the appropriate people actually find that. If you want to go ahead and message us, though.
Oh, I like that in my tea in the morning. Anyway.
You can message us at 33ponline@yahoo.com. And go to Pam if you have something to send to me. You can always send it to the email right there. Best way to get contact us and to organize our questions so that we make sure that we answer yours here on Hollywood Backlot with you and with Lou and you. Sorry about that. Well, also, too, we have.
I see people say multiverse. I think, well, it could be verse, but it's probably going to be verse yet. So,
yeah. Let's slow down with the multiverses here. Let's focus on really good storytelling, not just well,
let's put it this way:
plot device.
When you actually make a movie with that word in the title and it flops, that is not a clue saying, "Hey, let's make 10 more."
Yes,
and you don't have to have all of my experience in the vast world of Hollywood to understand that. It's like when they made the Andy Hardy movies with Mickey Rooney. The first one was successful. They made another one. Next one was successful. They made another one. Same thing with Ma and Pa Kettle and all the other great series. Abbott and Costello, Meet the Wolfman, then Dracula and everybody else. But if they'd lost money or stunk, that would have been the end of that. And even when it's Bob Hope and Bing Crosby in the Road Pictures, who are huge, huge stars, it's like, it's got to earn its keep, gang. It's got to earn its keep. Anyway.
Gotta earn its keep. And speaking about earning keep, you have the Amazing Genre Guys coming out basically every week. I know you're out of sync right now, but I know you've got some amazing films on the way. I cannot wait to see Sinbad the Sailor, and you guys taking all of that. I think it's gonna be
it's
fantastic,
folks. If you're looking for some joy in your life, watch that movie. Watch that movie and see this American-born, British and Swiss educated guy play a Persian prince. And just so you understand, the whole thing is about the quest for Daryabar, a mystical island that nobody knows where it is, except that it's somewhere out there. And it's the island, in theory, where Alexander the Great put all the loot he took out of India. And Sinbad turns out to be basically the grandson of the vizier of, anyway, you'll see. But geez, I mean, it's just when he spins a tale, it's just such fun. It's just pure, unadulterated fun. And George Tobias, who many of you will recognize as next door neighbor in a certain famous sitcom, plays his sidekick. And and Jane Greer and Mike Mazurki. And you think he's the bad guy, but he isn't. And I didn't spoil anything. Honest, I didn't. But in Technicolor, you bet. You bet. But the key to the whole thing is Fairbanks and Slezak. Slezak, he's just damn brilliant in this thing. So go watch that. It's out there. It's easy. And then buy the damn disc. That's the point I was going to make. We always are saying on Genre Guys and on here, buy the damn disc and own it, because you never know what they're going to do. We haven't yet, but we will on McClintock. But I was watching today a documentary series from 2015-16 on Amazon called Big Kitchens, about huge restaurant kitchens. And they were doing one on the Commander's Palace, which if you're ever in New Orleans and you don't go there, shame on you, because it's great. And it was in the middle of Mardi Gras. And so they're interviewing people about New Orleans and Mardi Gras. And this woman says, in her voice, on the screen, man, New Orleans kicks ass. And the subtitles from the subtitling company that I happen to have on, I don't know why, say, New Orleans kicks the door down. So if they can censor that in the subtitles of a documentary about a restaurant, for God's sakes.
Get the discs, people. Get the discs. You never know when the censorship will come.
Yes. And go to Commander's Palace. Oh, I wish I could be there right now eating that good food. I tell you, they know what they're doing. Anyway.
I agree.
So there's your lesson of the day about that whole theme song of mine about getting the real thing.
Get the real thing. Go on WWE Pro's channel, become a member, subscribe to this channel, get the real authentic Genre Guys, and subscribe to That Park Place.
Accept no substitutions, as they used to say.
That's right. Accept no substitutions.
All right. Well, we've done it again. Another Sunday afternoon of leisure and legerdemain.
Indeed.
That works.
I'm going to go ahead and redirect everybody over to Theme Park Wizard in order to enjoy a little bit of California adventure right before the trolleys actually go away. We're going to have a story on that in T3PO Live as well. It's going to be at 4
Did you see the story where they've put little signs at the various where the stops were saying it won't stop here today, it won't stop here today?
Did they really?
Yes.
Look at that.
I mean, it was still running, but they weren't stopping at the intermediate stops, so they had to actually make signs that say the trolley will not stop here today. So if you're standing here waiting for it, watch it go by.
Yeah, they are. Well, check it out, guys. Go ahead and tell them T3PO raid over there at Theme Park Wizard. I think you're going to get a kick out of that. Also, too, we're going to be, on future Hollywood Backlots. Might be redirecting over to Park Hop and stuff like that, where I'm going to be joining Jay there as well on a more regular basis. So stay tuned for that. Thank you so much, Lou. Thank you so much, chat, and everybody watching us. We'll see you next week.